Okay, next up is epistrophy, also known as epiphora. Epiphora is a repetition. It's a figure of repetition, and it involves a repetition of the same words at the end of successive clauses. So anaphora at the beginning, epiphora at the end. As long as the white man sent you to Korea, you bled. He sent you to Germany, you bled. He sent you to the South Pacific to fight the Japanese, you bled. Malcolm X, of course, a radical, it's interesting, though. Oftentimes, black speakers have the ability to be very poetic. They get a rhythm to their speech that we can learn from in ours. It was by the justice of the Roman people that the Carthaginians were conquered, by its force of arms that they were conquered, by its generosity that they were conquered. Again, you notice that the repetition stresses the fact that they were conquered. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Now that as a child phrase that's repeated draws your attention to that. But it does so in a subtle kind of way, the Apostle Paul using that in order to prepare you for putting away childish things. That's the point of it. So the focus on children there, I spake as a child, I understood as a child, I thought as a child. The way you act as a child is preparation for you to put away childish things. So that's the impact of it. Another figure of thought that's not included on this list is symplechy. Symplechy is a combination of anaphora and epiphora. So it repeats both at the beginning and at the end of each successive clause. An example of that, one whom the Senate has condemned, one whom the Roman people has condemned, one whom universal public opinion has condemned. Would you by your votes acquit such a one? That's an example of symplechy. Again, what is repeated is one whom at the beginning and has condemned at the end. So that's emphasized, and again, it's emphasized, draws your attention to it as a setup for that last phrase. Would you, by your votes, acquit such a one? So, again, that's the power of that figure of speech. Epinellipsis is a repetition, a figure of repetition. The repetition is at the end of a clause of words that occurred at the beginning. So the phrase that was used at the beginning is repeated at the end. And actually, blood hath bought blood, blows have answered blows. Okay, so the first word is the last word in each successive clause. Men of few words are the best men. Henry V. Okay, so there's that figure. And again, because the word is repeated, remember, anything that is repeated draws attention to itself automatically. So if you want to emphasize something, repeat it. That's the lesson that you can learn from these. And these are a variety of ways that you can repeat things artistically. All right, the next one is anadiplosis. Anadiplosis is also a figure of repetition. Literally, the word anadiplosis means repeating two pieces. Repeating two pieces. So what's repeating here is the last word of one clause at the beginning of the next clause. Knowing that, and by the way, the Apostle Paul liked this one. He used it several times. You recognize it in Romans 5, verses 3 through 5, and you can probably find some other examples in the Bible. Knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope, and hope maketh not ashamed. Let's see, I've got another example here from the Adoranium. You now even dare to come into sight of these citizens, traitor to the fatherland? Traitor, I say, to the fatherland. You dare come into the sight of these citizens? So again, it adds a little punch to what you're saying. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which maketh heaven and earth. In this case, the punch is on the correction there at the end. Okay, next is climax. Climax is also a figure of repetition. The Greek word climax means ladder. And that's the idea, is that you're climbing ever higher. It is an arrangement of words, phrases, or clauses in an order of increasing importance. So when my boys do wrestling, in some of their wrestling tournaments, they'll have place winners, and they'll have a little staggered platform for first, second, and third. First in the middle and on the highest part of the platform, second on his right, third on his left, and second will be about half the height of the first place, and third about half the height of the second place. And it shows who won. You can look at it and tell who the winners were. Okay? So we have an example in the handout: honor your father, your king, and your God, in order of increasing importance. Let me see if I've got another example here. Here's an example. Now, what remnant of the hope of liberty survives if those men may do what they please, if they can do what they may, if they dare do what they can, if they do what they dare, and if you approve what they do? Okay, so there are some examples of increasing importance there, beginning with they do what they please, and ending with they do what they dare. Okay, so it's placing it in order, at least the order that the author wants to impress upon you. Another example from Demosthenes: I did not say this and then fail to make the motion. I did not make the motion and then fail to act as an ambassador. I did not act as an ambassador and then fail to persuade the Thebans. So again, he's stressing there that he didn't go from bad to worse. He's essentially going from bad to worse, but he's highlighting what he did not fail to do. In fact, he's arguing that he did those things as well. Now, there is a relationship between anadiplosis and climax, because often when you use climax, you will use also the words that were used in the next phrase, so that you're tying the one phrase to the other, connecting them and showing the connection that way. Climax can be present also in the entire discourse, so that your discourse itself is working from, and that's sort of what we talked about when we discussed arrangement, specifically of your strongest and weakest points, building towards a climax. That is a possible arrangement that you can use. All right. The next one is a tricky one to pronounce. Antimetabole. Antimetabole, also known as epinatus. It means thrown over against. Thrown over against. In this, you are expressing contrasting ideas in juxtaposed structures. So juxtaposition, again, is where you set them side by side. Two contrasting structures, in this case, set side by side with each other. And you're expressing contrasting ideas there. It is a repetition of words in successive clauses in reverse grammatical order. All right? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. All right? So it stresses and really prepares you for the second part of that statement. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you, Christ said, and ordained you. That's antimetabole. A poem ought to be a painting that speaks. A painting ought to be a silent poem. That's antimetabole. Another example, if you are a fool, for that reason you should be silent. And yet, although you should be silent, you are not, for that reason, a fool. That's a little more complex, but you get the drift there. Again, it's a poetic rendering of these two ideas. The best known modern example of antimetabole was made popular by John Dean during the Watergate scandal. He was one of Richard Nixon's, worked in his administration. I can't think of the word. But he said, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. All right, next is polyptiton. Polyptiton. You notice that poly at the beginning? Poly means many. Polyptiton, repetition of words derived from the same root. All right, so notice how many different ways he uses the words from the same root. John F. Kennedy, now the trumpet summons us again, not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a call to battle, though embattled we are. Okay, so he has arms used in two different senses. Not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need. Not as a call to battle, though embattled we are. The Apostle Paul also led captivity captive, gave gifts. Those are polyptiton, a repetition of that same root. So it's a figure of repetition, two words that come from the same root. And again, it serves as a sort of magnifying glass. It puts your focus on those words. Often you're not aware of the way it puts your attention on those words. Now, polyptiton can also be at the level of the passage, in which case it is known as chiasmus. Chiasmus. Here's an example. They said, you have a blue guitar. You do not play things as they are. The man replied, things as they are changed upon the blue guitar. Do you see how the order is changed in this case? But there is that repetition as well. All right, that's figures of speech. Let's go on next to figures of thought.